Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Bid Breakfast. It's Wednesday at 8:30. Hopefully you are on your way into work or sat having your first coffee of the day, getting ready to fire up the laptop for today's work. Unfortunately, Chris can't join us today. He's busy doing some work instead of doing things like this. So he's out earning some money whilst we are talking to everybody else and enjoying ourselves. So Chris will be back in a fortnight's time, but it's just myself and Rob today. So quickly into the news update. We've only got one item on here today, and it's a big one. So it's G-Cloud 14. No doubt you will have seen that this is live now. There's lots of posts on LinkedIn about this. Just a quick summary of what it's going to be. The estimated value is £6.5 billion, so fairly chunky. It's split into three lots, high-level lots, which are cloud hosting, cloud software, and cloud support. And there's various things within that. So if this is of interest to you, I would strongly suggest that you get onto the CCS website, download the documents, and read what is available. There's a fairly reasonable deadline on this, a couple of months, well, not quite, but 6 weeks maybe, down the line, which is the 7th of May. So it's really good opportunity. It's a big CCS framework. There's lots of business driven through it. If this is what you do, I would strongly suggest that you have a look at it. Rob, is there anything you just want to quickly say about that?
It's a bit longer. I think it's about 11 weeks, but you missed a month out.
Of course, yeah. Oh, blimey.
There is plenty of time to do this properly if you get onto it soon. And there's still enough time to do all your proper planning, all your writing and review, as long as you get onto it in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Great stuff. And I've just got a month back in my life now that I've wished away.
Whether you want it or not.
Yeah. Maybe I was dreaming the clocks had gone forward already and it wasn't dark in the morning. Right. So on to our questions. This is the hangover from last time. Really good question, this one. How can I cut words from a response? Now, Rob, you maybe want to start this one because generally speaking, when we work together, you write and then I hack it around a little bit. So
I do a surprising amount of hacking myself when I do reviewing or editing as well.
Yeah.
It's I think we have a tendency as bid writers to try and write nice words in a nice flow, which you can't always do when you've only got 500, 300, 200 words. So when it gets to it, it's looking for those superfluous, sometimes describing words. I think that's a good way to cut. Also, linking words. I've just used one there also. Although the flow works quite nicely when you say, oh, and we also do this. It doesn't mean anything for the buyer. If you've got words to play with, that's absolutely fine. Other things, for example, use EG or IE. You can really, and once you start getting into it, you can probably, I think we found we can usually cut about 10 to 15% just by doing that without actually cutting any content. You only get to cutting content when you're really far over or you cannot find any other of those little things to cut.
I think the other thing that I found, Rob, and I don't know if you agree with this, is when you are focused on taking out the superfluous words, what you end up with is a very direct sentence of what it is you wanted to say.
Yeah.
And it's surprising from where I started out to what I end up with. It's very clear about what the response is then. It may, as you say, it may not read particularly well. It's not linked, and sometimes sentences are very short because, you get rid of the ands and you start a new sentence. But actually, what you've got is a very, very direct response to the question.
Definitely. I think if Chris were here, he'd say that's absolutely fine because as an evaluator, he's just looking for the content to be correct, not for it to necessarily read nicely. As long as it's understandable and it's not described as if it's to a 5-year-old, then you're probably okay with what you're doing. The other thing to look at is bullet points and tables if you're able to use those. They're often a really good method to cut out quite a lot of the introductory or linking words.
And I think that's another point as well about that introduction is, we would always recommend an introduction, but it's how far you go with that and what you put into it. And having a very tight intro, and as we've said on previous webinars, that intro is there to excite people about what they're going to read next. And that's all it has to do. So if it doesn't do that, do you need it? It may well be a 250-word question, in which case there may not be an intro in some cases, if the question's big. And, we've all been in those situations where there's 250 words to answer a 5 bullet point question with a lead question as well. So I think with all of this, my main thing before we even get onto the cutting would be don't worry too much about where you start out from. As Rob said, sort of 10 to 15% we can cut quite simply by taking out connectives and descriptive words. But I wouldn't be too disappointed if I saw a response that was maybe 30% over the word count. I'd be pretty confident I could get there without losing any content. And that comes with practice. And I think one of the things that we realised last year on a debrief session was that there's as much skill in editing as there is in writing. And when I say editing, I mean getting the initial content down into a response that still makes sense and answers the question. And that's a particular skill. And I think it's a different skill from writing, actually. I don't know if you'd agree with this, Rob.
It is. I'm lucky enough to have been able to cover off both. I think when my first draft has been really good, the next stages are often an element of editing as much as anything. So I've had quite a lot of practice, but yeah, it is a slightly different skill set. It may be that your writer has it, it may be that a bid manager has it, or somebody else, but it takes almost as much concentration to get your reviewing and your editing right as it does with the writing.
Yeah. And as I said, this comes with practice. So particularly if you're working with the same people, you will know their style. I know that Rob uses also 1,000 times in a response. So when I have to cut words for Rob, I will simply look for also to start with, or sometimes therefore, and that'll be my initial cut. And I'll probably go through 5 or 6 different things that I always do when I work with Rob, because I know that that's the low-hanging fruit, and then I can get on to how do I restructure a sentence now. So practice for me is the key to this. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, and particularly if you're working with the same people, you get a really good end product from it. Is there anything else you just want to touch on there, Rob?
Well, I'd say you've mentioned about 30%. I'd say as a bid writer, I usually try not to be more than 20% over. Yeah. That's mainly because I know I'm going to have to deal with it afterwards, and there's usually more content to put in. So 30% out push. If you're getting up to 50, it's going to be a lot of work to bring that back. It's still possible, but you're probably going to be cutting content.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's actually something we haven't talked about, is the amount of work or time, whichever way you want to look at it, that goes into this. And I know the last bid we worked on, just saving those last few words, and sometimes it's one word on a word count, and it takes 20 minutes to get rid of it. Yeah. So, and this is where it comes down to saving content and still delivering the message and having a reasonable bid that's okay to read. So don't underestimate the time you need for that.
Avoid too much hyphenating and forward slashes.
And I noticed recently, in the instructions document of a bid we worked on, I think it might have been the back end of last year, they very specifically said, do not include slashes. Don't overuse hyphens. Because
which is fair enough, because we've all seen it massively overused. And, there's no explicit instructions not to use it until now, but it doesn't look good.
No. Okay, seeing as we've used up the first 9 minutes on that one, we'll probably be able to press on. But I think this is something that's not often talked about, and it's really valuable. Okay, the next one is, how do I qualify an opportunity? And for those people that don't know what qualify means, that is essentially whether it's something that you can bid for or not. And at the early stages of qualification, it might not be 100% yes, we're definitely going for it. It could be yes, it's a possibility. And your qualification process should run all the way through the bid, even right up to submission. I've worked on bids where we haven't submitted 4 or 5 hours before the deadline because a risk hadn't been fully mitigated, and we were trying to get it done and it just couldn't happen for whatever reason. And it was a fairly complex set of circumstances. So when we're talking about qualifying, first of all, is it something we can bid on? And linked to that is, can we win it? And one of my mantras over the years has been, if you can't win it, don't bid it. Now, that's generally true. It's not always true. There might be cases where politically you might need to do it, whether that's internal politics or regional system politics. It might also be that you are new to a particular market and you want the feedback. It might be that you're just testing out a bid writer or whatever the reasons might be. But generally speaking, if you can't win it, don't bid it, because it's wasted time and cost, and also the impact on morale for the bid team. But there's a number of different things that you would look at, which might include geography, contract size, contract term, locality, deliverability, the commercials around it. So if there's very stringent penalties, if there's unachievable incentives, it's all of those things that you would look at. And I would say, generally speaking, and Rob, come in here when I stop talking, a qualification tool has anything between about 5 to 20 maybe criteria that you would qualify against. I've seen some very, very complicated ones which maybe go up to about 50 or 60 and produce a score. The ones that do produce scores, that's a guide. And I would always say this: I've worked in companies where the threshold is the threshold. And even though you think, well, you know what, the incumbent's really weak and I've done a poor job and there's a real opportunity here, because the score hasn't met the threshold, it's a no bid. So I would always say use the score to guide a conversation around whether you want to bid for it or not. And Rob, I'm conscious I've banged on for a bit there. So do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I've used quite a few tools in the past, and it's always been, yeah, we need one of these. Let's go through it. And then 90% of the time, the score is ignored, and it's let's bid for it. Because the pound signs are seen, and yeah, let's go for it. And Matt, you've made this argument many times. If you're bidding for things you can't win, or strongly believe you can't win, you can always put your time to better use. If you've got an in-house bid team, that's getting ready for the bids that you can win, doing the pre-bid work. If you use external bid writers, where you're saving yourself money there. So don't get blinkered by the pound signs. There's always a chance you could win. I mean, but the circumstances would have to fall very, very kindly in quite a lot of cases that, you know, the other bidders are all rubbish at writing, or the commissioner, for whatever reason, really likes your idea because it's something that they didn't know they wanted originally. But be very careful. If you're going to have a tool, yes, use it as a guideline, but also be quite strict about how you qualify opportunities.
Yeah, and it needs to be an ongoing thing. So hopefully people have got a pipeline. And if you're not sure what a pipeline is, I think we dealt with that a fortnight ago around what is a pipeline and how to create one. For your pipeline, you should qualify each of those opportunities. And that will be to get to the next stage. So this is an opportunity. Do we do the pre-bid research on it? Do we then attend the market engagement event? Do we then actually submit an interested bid for it? Whatever your stages might be in the process, you should constantly do that. Now, teams I've worked in have a weekly qualification meeting. Others have a monthly, depending on how many bids are coming across the desk. There are various tools out there, and if anyone's interested, we've got a couple that we could share if you contact us. But it's a very important part of making sure that you put your time in the right place when bidding.
There is also a balance between making a bit of an industry out of the qualification process, and I've worked in organisations where that's the case. Yes, you need to qualify things properly, but not at the expense of losing so much time on the project that it's pointless, even if you do qualify.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now this is your passion, Rob, so I'm not even going to talk on this one, but the question is, what is the social value portal, TOMS, etc.?
We're going to go quite light on this because I'm conscious of time and we could go on forever. So the social value portal is a tool that's used by a lot of councils, actually a lot of organisations such as social housing, to use as their portal for social value outcomes. They often use this for procurement and ask potential bidders to use that portal and put in what their commitments are. The social value uses something called TOMS, which is the Target and Outcomes Framework. This is very quantified. This framework is the best way of putting it. Many other social value questions and areas, it's a lot more about writing what you're going to do. But the social value portal and TOMS is, what are you going to commit to in each year? Are you going to employ half a person in year one, 2 people in year 2, and so on and so forth? It's quite limiting in a way for some organisations. It's quite difficult. I've had plenty of clients who look at it and get very confused, even with the user manuals and the tutorials, because Another element of this is that you are held to those numbers. It is a record of the numbers you will be held to across the contract, and you can get in trouble if you don't do what you've committed to. So you've got to be very careful, but you've also got to be quite certain at the same time. It's a very difficult balance, and I have come across instances where competitors have put in all sorts of fanciful things on the social value portal. They've scored maximum marks and they've won the bid. Whether they can or will deliver those things is another matter. So I think there's becoming a bit more of a balance with the social value portal. I've seen some councils move away from it. Hopefully it's used in the right way by councils and other organisations going forward. But if you're not sure, and my very brief explanation probably hasn't completely explained it, look online. There are lots of tools. There are lots of tutorials. Councils often put on their own workshops around it. Worst case scenario, come to us and I'll give you a much more detailed explanation and walk you through it.
Great, thanks, Rob. And I know when we've worked on bids, we've found it quite useful because of the level of detail it goes into around the value of different projects and schemes, doesn't it? And it also, if I remember rightly, doesn't it account for localities as well? And that there's different.
If it's used properly, the values will correspond to the area and the industry. Mm-hmm. If it's used properly.
Yeah. Okay. So just as a kind of method of calculating social value, even if it's not for a bid and you've got access to the portal, you could potentially look at your company's social value program for the year and list everything out, and then it would tell you the pound notes of what it's worth.
Yes, it can be a useful tool if you want to quantify, and we have had instances where we've used TOMS as a spreadsheet from the portal to quantify the social value and put it into a bid where they're not even asking for TOMS. We've gone, this is a nationally recognised thing, and that's actually gone down really well. It's almost better to use TOMS outside of the social value portal than within it.
Yeah, and for that, I mentioned that Chris wasn't around today. He's actually delivering a social value workshop this morning, so no doubt he'll probably just be getting ready to start, actually, won't he?
He's got quite a lot of experience of dealing with this from the procurement side as well, so his opinions are quite interesting.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let's move on to the next question then. Another great question here, and linked to the next one. But this one is specifically, what makes a good example or case study? And again, Rob, I'm going to get you to lead off on this because you're normally the one that starts to plan these out and asks the team at the other end for the examples, because you've obviously got a lot of experience in what the question is asking for and then how you relate the example or case study back.
Depending on your word count, let's assume you've got 100 or 200 words. You've got a bit of room. You want to be very clear on who the example case study relates to. So who did you deliver this for? When did you deliver this? I don't like not seeing examples where there aren't years on it, because it could be 20 years ago. The value, potentially, if you think that's relevant. Quantifiable other elements. So if you delivered to patients, how many patients or how many service users or whatever it is. A clear description of what you did. Okay. Make it very clear on what you did and how that relates back to the question that you're answering. Ideally, the example or case study is backing up a point of how you're going to do something in the bid, or backing up a benefit that you've put in. What you also need to show is the benefit that you provided in the example case study. So you can't just have a case study going, we did X, Y, Z, we delivered something to 50 patients. That's lovely. What was the actual outcome for that client? Was it cost savings? Was it reduced hospital admissions, or whatever it is? Use the same methodology as you would for answering any question in detailing what a case study is. So actually, you still can go with the what, how, why, when, or Pearl, as we're now developing it into. You can still go what you delivered, how you delivered it, why you delivered it, and backing that up with evidence.
Brilliant. And I think for me, the simple answer to this is it's an example or case study that demonstrates you can do what you're bidding for. So as Rob's already covered off, similar contract size and value, similar set of services, and that you've done it well. And that's what, for me, makes a good case study. We've certainly worked on plenty of bids over the years where it's been a bit of a stretch, and that will link into the next question. It's not been the best example. And as you kind of read it through, you think, well, we're kind of relying on having a bit of a leap of faith here, using these case studies as examples. So if you don't have good examples or case studies, then it's very difficult, and we'll deal with that in the next question. But Rob,
I've seen examples just be put into an answer that obviously bear no relation to the question. It's like, oh well, we've done something and we've got some word counts, so we'll throw it in. Yeah. So that's obviously not good practice.
Yeah. Just a small point, I might have misheard this. I think you said when you've got lots of word count, 100 to 200 words in your preamble.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's a normal sort of word count, or would it be more like 500?
Well, I'm talking specifically. You've hived off 200 words specifically.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay. And just so sort of people have got a rough idea, if you were writing a case study and there was no word limit, what sort of allowance would you give yourself? Would it be half a page, maybe a couple?
I think if you don't have a word count, I think you up to a page. Yeah. But as with any answer, don't waffle. Yeah. Get it to the point.
Yeah. Okay. And that links us nicely into the next question, which is, I don't have any case studies or contract examples, so how do I pass the SQ? And this is a common problem for small companies, for new bidders, for people who've worked as subcontractors before, and it's a common thing that we come across. There are a number of different solutions for this. Sometimes you don't need a solution because within the guidance it will say if you're a new company, you don't need to provide contract examples or case studies, but you do need to explain how you would do it for us. So sometimes there is a get out clause in there, but if there isn't and it's a pass-fail and you do need to provide these, then we've already touched on related services or products that you could use, but you would have to explain, and Rob, you'll probably come in and just clarify this a little bit. If it's a relatable example, you will need to explain how that's relevant to the contract you're bidding for. Rob, is there anything you'd want to say specifically about how you relate it?
Well, there's a few ways it can be related back. So, I mean, it's difficult without having a specific service in mind. But it could be that you follow a similar process. It might be that it's a customer service element or the IT system, whatever it is, as long as there's a strong enough link into that. The other way I've seen that got round, and sometimes the commissioners say this is fine, is that you can go by individual's experience, as long as they are relevant. In fact, there's a bid I think we're working on at the moment where that's the case, where even if the organisation doesn't, say if you're a new organisation, if 5 people in the organisation have relevant experience, you can use that, and you can use that as a reference. Yeah. There's also often in the standard SQ, I think it's usually 6.3, where they say if you don't have any examples, describe any relevant points as to why you think you're best or why you think you qualify for this contract.
And the final part of this jigsaw for me is, obviously it's too late if you are bidding, but if you are looking at an opportunity that's further down the track and you know that this is going to be a problem, then it's not unreasonable to piggyback somebody else. So if you are a subcontractor or you're a small business and you're already delivering this type of service, then make sure that you've got a formal subcontract in place with you and the person you're working for, and it's linked to the head contract. So if the head contract is for the delivery of PPE or whatever it might be, and that head contract is named in your contract and you're working to the same terms and conditions, all of the contractual clauses are the same, then you may well be able to use that. And that'll certainly be stronger than trying to make something up or describe what you would do. But whilst it's a sort of fairly boring point, it's really important for this type of question. So make sure it's contractually dealt with, whether it's by whichever director is responsible or your legal team, but make sure you've got a formal subcontract in place that specifically names the head contract and the T's and C's within it. Okay, should we move on to the next one, Rob?
Let's do it.
Right, great question here. What was the best bid you worked on and why?
I'll go quickly. I keep coming back to the one where we properly started what, how, why, when. There are others where it's been more satisfying. Well, there's a couple. In fact, I won't use that one because I've talked about that one a lot. So I was asked by a friend if I could help out a small organisation. I think they provided GP services. Then they had one practice, and they needed to retain a caretaking contract, and they also tried their luck at winning a couple of much bigger contracts, including the flagship practice of a national provider. So, well, I'll give it a go. Like, I think I can help them retain the caretaking contract. A lot of capture calls, a lot of close working. The lead GP and practice manager were really involved. A bit of external support as well. We got a couple of really good drafts in 4 weeks, and they won every single practice that they went for, which was a huge shock, not just to them, but to the commissioners and particularly the national provider. And I think they times their list size by 3 in one go. So that I was pretty proud of that. It wasn't the best process, but that was definitely the best outcome.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I think from a process point of view, the one that I would pick out is an IT bid that I worked on about 3 years ago. And this started pre-bid, and we'd had an approach from this company, asked if we could help them. The answer was yes. Here's what the program of work might look like. So I went down there on site the first day to run a workshop around why they would award them the contract. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 months later that I spoke to the guy at their end, and he said, "You know what? We really got no idea of what this session was going to be because I'd purposely not briefed them. I just wanted free flow thinking for the day, no kind of preconceptions or sort of prep for the session." And he said, by the end of it, we really understood how our delivery model was put together and what it meant in terms of benefits so that there was a purchaser and then the end users in this. It was a little bit more complicated. That then went on to a really engaged set of subject matter experts at their end. The business development director was very, very well engaged. He was on top of things. We used to have regular catch-ups all the way throughout the bid process. And we worked on 3 or 4 big ones, but it was that first one where we detailed the model, broke it down into its component parts, made sure that all the operational bits worked. We had a full understanding of what the risks were, what the workforce model might look like. And when it came to writing the bid up, it went very, very smoothly. And we ran through our 3 draft process, no problems. And it was slightly more complicated in terms of how this was presented because the people that we were working with were an incumbent provider, but were the minority provider in a partnership. And this bid moved them into the majority provider and the lead contract holder. So there was quite a lot of negotiations to do with subcontractors and various other things. But ultimately, that changed their business. It protected it for the next 10 years, and it put them in a position where they were then holding a major contract instead of being a subcontractor. So for me, that was probably the best one I worked on. We've got probably about 30 seconds. It may well be that we cover this on the next one because I think this is a great question. What are the common mistakes you see bidders make? Do you want to quickly start it, Rob, and then we'll knock it on the head and maybe pick it up next time?
Misunderstand the question and forget to read the evaluation criteria.
Okay. So my one response to this before we pick it up again next time is people bid on stuff they can't win. And we've already touched on that. So thank you for watching. We are pretty much at 9 o'clock. I'm sure it's just going to tick over any second now. The next episode will be on the 13th of March. So if you're on your way into work and need something to do, then please join us then. And we look forward to seeing you in a fortnight's time. Thanks, Rob. We'll catch you all later.
Thank you.